Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about this ongoing health scare that is plaguing the nation and the world. Today we're specifically focusing on some certain areas and certain situations in different states across America. First of all, we got today's subject, a so-called quarantine party that's being covered by NowThis News. Now, if you're familiar with that website and that channel, we've covered them before here, so you might be, because now this is a starkly liberal outlet who hates Trump, hates conservatives, and in a lot of ways, they hate America too. They're classic liberals trying to subvert us and try to turn us towards a more liberal, socialist, Marxist ideology. And today's video falls right in step with that because they've got some clips and some video from what they call a quarantine party. And it's a group of people gathered and getting really close together, partying, I think sharing drinks, smoking together in a very bad situation to pass this virus. And that's obviously a bad thing, but the point of this video is something far different. You see, we're going to get to the video soon and you'll see specifically what I'm talking about. But what NowThis first tries to do is compare these quarantine parties with these demonstrations that have been going on across America too. We actually cover one that happened in Michigan. We covered it in the video a couple days ago. And in that state, there's a lot of people kind of going out to the Capitol saying they don't want lockdown anymore, and they're showing up with signs and demonstrating stuff like that. And it's a very different situation, but NowThis wants to compare those demonstrations to the quarantine parties for a couple of special reasons. First of all, they're liberals who want things to continue to be locked down, and they're trying to point out the fact that these demonstrators at, say, Michigan and other states have had demonstrations too. I think I saw another one in Huntington Beach, California, and they're trying to compare them to these quarantine parties and show how the quarantine parties are getting locked down upon. The cops are showing up, they're breaking people up, they're fining people, but these demonstrations are supposedly getting off scot-free. Now, this is partially true, but it makes sense when you think about it, and it's not happening for the reasons that NowThis implies. NowThis wants to make a racist angle about this because, as you'll soon see, that quarantine party we're about to get to only features a certain race of people, and in addition, these demonstrations tend to be another race. Now, the demonstrators in Michigan are obviously going to be more European-influenced white people, a lot of people with Second Amendment supporting things, and signs related to that and wanting to work. But at the same time, those demonstrators, if you watch closely, and I'll have some clips, I'll show you some clips and pictures right here as I talk, and you can see they're kind of separating. I mean, there's some cases where they're in slammed, really tight crowds, but in other cases, they're all far apart. They're kind of socially distancing. They have the 6-foot distance. They're also wearing masks and not being generally rowdy. They're not bumping into each other. They're not sharing drinks. They're not smoking together, passing around stuff. And as you'll see by this quarantine party, that's exactly what's happening. But surprise, surprise, NowThis and their liberal leaders, they want to support and defend that quarantine party because it's mostly minorities attending it. And they want to say that if the demonstrations are okay, the quarantine party is okay. But these are totally different situations if you think about it realistically and you have a more open mind about things. Now, the other implication here, of course, is that the virus and things going on are racist. Everything's racist to leftists like this. And they're trying to say that, oh, the cops are racist for breaking up quarantine parties, but not breaking up demonstrations. Even though, as I just listed, there's obvious reasons for both being treated a little bit differently. First of all, a demonstration is like your right. You have a right to protest. You have freedom of speech in America. So it's a little bit harder to stop that versus, say, a party. I mean, I wish we had a right to party like the Beastie Boys song says. We got to fight for a right to party. But that's not necessarily something in the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. And I mean, I understand there's freedom there too. And there's definitely an argument to say people should be able to gather when they want. And I think I've made that argument too whenever we talked about possibly ending lockdowns. You know, you should consider the fact that these people have freedoms and they should be able to, express them, and if they want to risk themselves, that's sort of their right. But I don't think this situation with NowThis, it's actually just a quarantine party that got the owners fined. So I don't even think the party was specifically broken up, or like it's not like a SWAT team showed up and started locking everyone up. It was just a few fines given out to the owners of that party, and that's part of the city's right. They can fine people if they're not following the rules in the certain lockdown situations. So that all kind of makes sense. And I think you guys get where I'm going from here, so let's go ahead and turn to the Now This video. Here's a clip of their site. As you can see, it's getting kind of a lame reaction. A few people saying this is dangerous, this is a foolish, they're all gathering really close together. And as you'll see when we roll through it, there's not actually much to hear in the audio. It's just people at a party. These Now This videos tend to have like text at the bottom, but yeah, this is a party in Chicago, and as you'll see, this is way different than the demonstrators. These people are all really close together. They're all bumping into each other. There's drinking going on. There's smoking going on, and this kind of smoking, you'll pass it to the left, pass it to the right, sharing lots of germs. This is just a bad setup for this kind of virus, this kind of quarantine situation. Again, I understand this is their freedom, this is their right, but what I'm kind of more defending is, let me pause it right here. PD will disperse crowds in violation of social distancing requirements and, if necessary, issue citations or, as last resort, enforce arrest. Louis Agostini, CPD, Office of Communications and News Affairs. So that's a comment from I think the Chicago Police Department, and they're commenting because this is in Chicago, this is a party, and I think you can already see where this is going. I mean, the whole point is they're trying to say the cops are racist. They're trying to say even the virus is racist at some times. And this is where I want to get into that argument for a second, because the whole argument has come out there that, oh, the virus affects minorities more. And that's like a thing that I think AOC has said. A lot of liberals and progressives have tried to make that claim. And that's kind of funny, because you look at something like this and you see this big party in Chicago with like 100 minorities in a room, not really caring about spreading the sickness, not listening to the rules, not doing the proper social distancing. And then you ask yourselves, is it really that the virus is racist, or are certain groups of people just reacting to it differently? I mean, I haven't seen any large gatherings like this of the other races. I haven't seen like a white people party being posted all over the place, even though I'm sure it's happened. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. There's probably more actually, because there's more of that race in the country. But the point is this totally blows out the idea that the virus is racist. They try to say, oh, it affects minorities more. And that's probably true, but it's not because of the virus or because the government or someone's racist. It's because of their own doing. It's because different people react to the virus differently. And in addition, minorities tend to be in more heavily populated areas like Chicago. So it's causing them to be exposed more. So they're getting the virus more. And it's because of directly what they've done. It's their actions. It's basically their agency, their fault. And I'm not trying to be too hard on them, but the point is, you have freedom and you could do that, but then you can't also complain and say the virus is racist whenever you go out and endanger yourself. Next video goes through the party more. Again, Chicago. It was hosted by the adult son of the home's owner, and they're complaining about it getting fined. And they're trying to compare it to these protests. And I think this is just indefensible, because, this is exactly what they said wasn't happening. They're trying to blame this stuff on racism or the government or the lockdown or whichever, but it's really just their own actions causing this. And here's another quote from the CPD. It says, "We issued her a couple citations for public nuisance and gave her strict warnings, and we also just put her on notice." CPD's Grand Central District, the Chicago Sun-Times, quoted this. So more information and more just now this kind of white knighting black people, white knighting these minorities, trying to say they didn't do nothing. And although there's a good argument, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, you could say people want to party, they want to do what they want. And yeah, you could argue that the government has overreached all day. But the point of today is this totally debunks the racist idea and the thought that the virus is offensive, because as we saw, those other protests that they're trying to compare it to, those people were still more prepared. They were doing the right things. They had the mask. They had some distance. They had protection for themselves. They were probably washing their hands more. They weren't trading drinks and smokes. And this party right here has all of that, and it's a direct defiance of orders. And I think you could also argue that it's not like as noble of a cause. Now, I think people might disagree or agree with those protesters and the demonstrators in, say, Michigan or Huntington Beach, but they're actually out there trying to fight for their right to live, their right to work. They want to stop the lockdowns and have something done. They're kind of out there for social reasons, whereas this party is just happening for people to have fun, for people to have drinks, get to see each other, hook up, find a girlfriend, whatever you may do at a party. And that's all fine and dandy too, but it's certainly a less necessary kind of thing. Now, with all that said, I think we got a good view of how this thing's going. Let's continue watching some of the video. More party stuff, lots of different shirts, colors in there. Chicago mayor is speaking. She responded to this video, it should be interesting, saying the adults in the city need to act responsibly to keep the infections down. That's a good point. What happened in the scene was just foolish and reckless. There's got to be a level of personal responsibility for that. Millennials aren't children. Millennials, continues here, mayor of Chicago, actually making some sense, I think, which is surprising. Many of them are in their 20s. They're full functioning adults, and we expect adults to act responsibly, particularly in a time of pandemic. So it looks like they're coming down against them. I think the mayor is actually backing up her police department and the decrees and the orders given by the state, which I think is still a social distancing lockdown situation in Illinois. Whether or not the whole state needs to be locked down still, that's a whole other issue. I think the city of Chicago certainly has some issues, and these parties are certainly a problem, but maybe the rest of the state is okay. It's more rural in the rest of the state outside of Chicago, aside from possibly some of the areas near St. Louis is another metropolitan area that's partly in Illinois. But I think, yeah, the mayor is trying to crack down on this, but it is worth pointing out again, that mayor is very likely to be a corrupt Democrat. I'm sure she's a liberal. I know Chicago's been run by liberals for generations, and that's why it's gotten so bad there, and that's why the city's gotten so ghetto. That's why it's one of the murder capitals of the world. South Chicago is a bad place right now. Lots of gunfights, lots of problems with crime, stuff like that, people disobeying. And this is another thing that comes back to the reason this stuff is happening. Now, there's people disobeying the law, not respecting the police and the orders of the government. And that goes back to the way this area and then some of these cultures are developed. I mean, it sounds, I know it might sound racist to say that, but you can't deny that you're going to this area, it's in South Chicago, and it's the same place where they have all these gangs and these people with weapons killing each other, not listening to those laws. So do you really think the same kinds of people are going to listen to these social distancing laws saying you can't party, you can't go out? I don't think so. I think they're kind of just apt to not listen to authority. They're not respecting the cops. I mean, that's right there in a lot of their music. You know, you could think of the NWA song that says, you know, F the police, things like that have always been in rap music, and that's where this kind of comes from. It's like, you don't respect the police in those situations, so you're not going to do so in this party situation. And then, yeah, they face the penalties for it, but the problem is, right here, now this is trying to defend them, and it's kind of messed up because I'm not sure how bad those fines or fees were, but it sounds like that place, that location was warned a number of times. And look, we're not even talking about the party getting broken up. They had their party, they finished it, and nothing happened. I'm not seeing any arrests or anything like that. I mean, I don't know, there could be more to the story that's not in this video, but the problem really is they're mad about being fined, and then they're trying to compare it to these demonstrations, which really don't compare. And then on top of that, we're talking about proving the fact that the virus isn't racist, and if any of these minority groups get infected more, it's because they're doing things like this. Thanks for your time today, guys. Great talking to you. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Let's hear what you think about this story. What do you think about NowThis? What do you think about the lockdowns? What do you think about partying during the pandemic and how those compare to these demonstrations and what's going on in Michigan and Huntington Beach? Thanks again for watching today's video. If you could also hit the like button, that really helps this channel. And until next time, you guys have a great day.